Hello, welcome to another installment of Priceless B-Movies. My name's Colin Price, and I figured now that I got the Night of the Demons movies out of the way, I'm going to do a review for another horror comedy that came out around the same time, but unlike the Night of the Demons, never had any actual sequels or any continuations. Unless you count the fact that From Dusk Till Dawn really ripped it off. Vamp. Vamp was made in 1986 and stars Chris Makepeace and Robert Rusler as two guys in college who go off to a strip club in another town to try to find a dancer for a frat party. What follows is almost a 80s horror movie equivalent of the film After Hours by Martin Scorsese, as these two find themselves stuck in the nightclub that ends up to be completely populated by vampires. Now, this movie is very, very 80s, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. What I mean by that is the whole look and feel of the film, it just reeks of the decade. The neon lighting inside the nightclub and also around parts of the town that they end up in seem very reminiscent of Dario Argento's work, like in Suspiria, for example. This makes for some really cool imagery throughout the second and third act of the film. As for the cast of the movie, Chris Makepeace and Robert Rusler. Chris Makepeace, I've never really seen in anything else, so I can't comment on his skills, whether he's either really good in this or really bad in this. I will say that he definitely seems to be trying to do a kind of Matt Dillon impression all through the movie. Robert Rusler, on the other hand, is in a handful of 80s movies. The one that comes directly to my mind is Weird Science, where he and Robert Downey Jr. are the bullies. Oh, I almost forgot. They also end up having to bring along Geddy Watanabe. He's kind of this geek, but he's a rich geek, so he is basically their transportation to the nightclub, and also desperate for attention, and extremely funny. Geddy Watanabe is essentially doing the same shtick here that he does throughout 16 Candles, and it is every bit as hysterical this time around. Rounding off the supporting cast is Dee Dee Pfeiffer, yes, that's Michelle's little sister, who may or may not be a creature of the night like the other women at the nightclub. Sandy Barron, who is the doorman of the nightclub. I cannot say enough about Sandy Barron in this movie. He makes the movie for me every time I watch it. Even genre favorite Billy Drago shows up in what's basically a glorified cameo. Of course, when the movie was released, the main draw and the main advertisement on every poster for this movie, we had Grace Jones, who is the kind of head vampire and also the owner of the nightclub. Grace Jones is pretty good in this. She's definitely pretty creepy, but considering that she was advertised as what should have been the main draw to this film, she really isn't in a whole lot of it. She's only got a handful of key scenes, and for a huge section of the third act, basically disappears until she shows up again at the very end for the obligatory frightening climax of the film. All in all, the actors in this movie really do run the gamut from good to fantastic, with definite highlights among them. The only other thing about Vamp that I'd really like to bring up in this review, and that really strikes me about it, is that unlike From Dusk Till Dawn and Bordello of Blood and other movies dealing with ladies of the night, as I'll put it, turning out to be vampires, Vamp is actually very tasteful. There isn't an overabundance of nudity in this film. The acts themselves at the strip club are very tastefully done, very artistically done. There is one standout where Grace Jones has herself completely covered in this almost zebra body paint that you really have to see to believe. Other than being kind of ignored by mainstream cinema, Vamp is also, I think, one of the most quotable movies. There's a huge amount of great lines in this movie. But unfortunately, because not a lot of people know it, I think if you were to quote it in too many public places, people would wonder what you were talking about. And it's a shame, because the script for this film is so good in terms of dialogue. The movie does have its faults, though. Once you get into the second and third act, like I said, your main villain completely disappears for a good chunk of it, and the movie kind of gets uneven. You're not really sure what aspect of the story you're supposed to be focusing on at any given time. So you're really just kind of along for the ride and assuming that this jigsaw puzzle will come together in the end. I'm not sure if that's on purpose or if the execution just wasn't up to par with the script. Because of the rocky second and third act, I'm actually going to give Vamp 3 out of 4 stars. I don't think it deserves that perfect rating, but I think it comes awfully close. If you are a fan of From Dusk Till Dawn, or any vampire comedy for that matter, Vamp is definitely worth checking out. So that's my review of Vamp. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned. My next film I'm going to do is a kind of popcorn horror flick called, I shit you not, Popcorn. As always, if you can think of a horror, crime, or action film that you think not a lot of people know about and that you would like to hear my opinion on, please let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more Priceless B-Movies.